Secondly, just a reminder, we're not going to have Q&A after these presentations, but after the next presentation, if you want to learn more about Screen School, there will be a workshop right after that. If you want to learn more about persuasive design, which Richard Freed will be talking about, I highly recommend Chrissy Bamford's breakout session, and also there will also be work groups on both of these sessions tomorrow. I mentioned at the beginning of the day that one of the things I'm most excited about this conference is bringing together old, longtime supporters of CCFC with new friends. Matt Clement and Matt Miles and Joe Clement, I'm sorry, I'm not reading from notes, belong to the new friends category. A couple years ago, I got an invite to join a Google group of people who are concerned about screen time, and they share articles and information. And one day, the two moderators of this group, Matt and Joe, just happened to mention, oh, our book is coming out on Monday. Yeah, very unassuming, not the types that, most people would be using their listserv to promote their book constantly. Their book is Screen School. It's fantastic. It will be for sale tomorrow at the conference bookstore. It's really one of the most important books I've read. One of the most important points they make is that as teachers, they actually see your kids and know what's going on more with your kids than maybe you do as parents, and they understand what's happening with these digital devices. They are incredibly dedicated teachers, they're parents of young children, and somehow in between all that, they managed to write, to me, what is one of the best books of the year. So please welcome Matt Miles and Joe Clement.
Thanks very much. This is great. It's really great to be here. We are so unassuming. In fact, we didn't even bring a copy of the book. We're putzes. Really, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm just wondering, show of hands, is anybody a teacher, classroom teachers here? A couple of classroom teachers. Oh, excellent. How did you all afford to get here? So classroom teachers, we do want to find out in either the work group session or at any point over the next couple of days if what we're saying is something that you're seeing, if you're seeing the same sorts of things in your school. We're hoping that it is, because we did a lot of interviewing and a lot of calling around to teachers and interviewed teachers really all over the world. And we tried to report on the trends that we were seeing, and we saw that there was a kind of an empty space. There's obviously a lot out there that we've heard over the last few hours and will through the whole weekend, about the dangers of overusing screen time, but there was precious little about what's going on in schools, and that's really going to be our value added today. Before we really begin, we have to issue a disclaimer that we are in no way speaking on behalf of our school system. That is funny. That is a fact that will be painfully obvious here in about 10 seconds. So yeah, we wrote this book, Screen School, and wow, were we unprepared for the reaction that it got from within education. And when I say within education, I mean the educational decision makers. Were very nervous about what we had to say, and so nervous that this was just last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, I was standing outside my classroom, between classes for change classes or whatever, and I saw our French teacher coming down the hall. It's a huge school, and she and I had never interacted. I knew who she was, and she obviously knew who I was, and she walked up to me, she was kind of looking down, and she stood right next to me, and she said, I just want you to know I read your book, I thought it was really great. and she hustled off. And teachers hopefully are laughing particularly hard, because I bet that sounds familiar, that if you dare to challenge the maxims that this is only good, it's an unoutward good, that there's something wrong with you as a teacher, and that's just not the case. Of course, you know that the teacher is really the most important thing that goes on, or that happens in a classroom is the teaching. Matt and I don't bring a lot to the table other than our experiences as a teacher. And after everything we've heard today, all the great, really the presentations and all the information is really mind-boggling. One of the things that should be going through your head is, why would a teacher have to react like that to feel secretive about liking a book that says maybe technology isn't always great? And how did technology come to take over in the schools anyway? Why is Google now running schools? And how did that come to be? That's kind of a weird thing. And we can help you with that. We can help you answer that question. And you have to start with the educational decision makers, the principals and the superintendents. All of whom, as far as I know, want nothing more than to help children. We have not met anybody in education that wants to hurt kids, which is good. But all of the people, the top to bottom, want to help kids. And if you're an educational decision maker, there's a tremendous amount of pressure on you. You know that what you hear all the time is schools are failing, schools are failing, schools are failing. And this is not new. This goes back to A Nation at Risk came out in 1983, and obviously the idea that schools are failing predates that by a long shot. And if you're an educational decision maker, you get this nice job, and now you're the one that has to fix the schools. And so I always imagine them sitting in an office thinking, how do I fix the schools? How do I fix the schools? How do I fix the schools? And then the phone rings, and it's Google, or it's Dell, or it's Microsoft. And they say, hey, we can help lead you and your school system to the promised land, flowing with milk and honey. And we can make your school, we can make all your problems go away, we can make everything better. And we listen. And we listen because they have a really cool presentation, and they have people who know what they're doing. In education, one of the things that we do, it's the most self-loathing profession I've ever heard of, because we automatically say, well, they must know what they're talking about. What are they talking about? Educate kids? Yeah, they probably know. We're the ones that know about schools and about teaching and about kids, how kids learn and so on. And we just throw that aside and say, well, Dell must know better than we do. And so you end up with school systems who spend billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars, of course, on gadgets and apps and whatever. And we're supposed to simply nod and say, okay. And so our role is to kind of peel back the layers and let you know exactly what's happening in schools and how we got there. We've seen that the educational ed tech companies have packaged myths and sold them to schools, and schools have very willingly bought them. And so the goal today is going to be to kind of peel back the layers behind those myths.
So we typically start by introducing who we're not, because we're very much aware of the fact that we aren't the first two old people to warn of the pending doom brought on by the next generation. So we're certainly not the first two teachers to do that. It's pretty much, so we want to disassociate ourselves from the stereotypical old, curmudgeonly, jaded teacher. As far as curmudgeonly is concerned, we're too young. Or at least I'm too young for that. Jaded, we both love our job very much. We love teaching, so that's still several years away. The fact is that we don't hate technology. We both came into teaching with a background in IT. We're very open to the idea of technology in the classroom. But about 7 or 8 years ago, we started to hear about this digitally enhanced super kid. None of this vernacular is ours. So we heard these stories about kids that from birth were inundated with all of this wonderful cutting edge technology and how that made them superior in many ways. We'll go into details about that. But that's what we heard in education all the time. These kids are going to be great. And they're so far evolved that they're actually even worthy of a new nomenclature, H. sapiens digital.
Yeah, that is funny. It's really sad because that's a real thing. Like there's the ed tech proponents who talk about H. sapiens digital and how they're new and they're different. And well, I won't say every, but pretty close to every professional development session that we're involved in some way is about getting the most out of H. sapiens digital, out of these super kids. And teachers, you need to kind of get out of their way because they know best and they know what they need and they know how to do all this great stuff that you don't have any idea about because you're old. And kids know all this stuff. And I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase digital native and digital immigrants, but the kids are digital natives, and so they know, and we just need to learn from them. And we're told all the time that the kids have these new abilities, and we just kind of need to get on board and move along. And so the digital native is, they're wonderful at multitasking, they're going to teach us about technology, they've got this insatiable thirst for knowledge, and they're more socially aware than ever before, and they've got better relationships with their peers, and we're told all this, and we're just told, look, they're going to lead you, you get out of the way, and that is the sloppy and wishful thinking of the most dangerous kind. And that's really what has engendered the ed tech firms to come up with a giant pile of myths that we'll get into here. Fifth one.
Yeah, so I mean, we're inundated with these outlandish and absurd claims as an educator all the time. So it's really, we only have 30 minutes, so we're just going to focus on the major three. And the idea behind these three myths is they are what allows for us to go from an educational system that you and I are familiar with, that we grew up with, to what we have today. And that's education that's just absolutely inundated with technology. And it's actually technology first, and that's the first myth kind of gears itself to this fear that old people are worried that, you know, we see young people on their screens all the time. We're worried that kids are using their screens like kids would, like a toy. So we began to hear about 5 or 6 years ago, don't worry, these kids are doing amazing things when they're on their phones. You see them with their earbuds in, their headphones on, and you think they're just playing games, you think they're doing amazing things. They're doing things, and we've heard this is a literal quote. They're doing things like in their spare time, researching water conservation techniques in Botswana for fun. They're in Google Hangouts with PhDs in civil engineering from Tokyo. That's the amazing things they're doing. And as an educator, this is very endearing because you think that these kids are coming to you with all of this background knowledge and this insatiable thirst for knowledge, and that you can just add on to it. And it's good to hear that. And as a parent, you know, it's good to hear because, you know, it lessens that cognitive dissonance between, you know, the guilt you feel for having your kid on his or her iPad for too long. So it's something that we wanted to hear, but the reality is, you know, we can tell you after watching kids and interacting with, you know, way too many kids on a daily basis that I have never caught a kid on a cell phone researching water conservation techniques or anything like that. I can tell you the only things I've ever seen kids do are 5 things. The first thing I've seen kids do, selfies. Selfies all the time. If you walk behind a kid, 9 times out of 10, they're looking at their screen, they're looking right back at their face. The second thing they do is they play video games. Video games, Fortnite is the biggest one right now. Third one, watch videos. Fourth one, watch videos of kids playing video games. And unfortunately, what's becoming increasingly common is the last one is they cheat on tests. That's what we see.
Yeah. That is what we see. And look, of course, all those wonderful things, the water techniques, water conservation techniques in Botswana, of course it can be done. That's not what is being done. And so we have to live, and we have to do a better job of separating this obvious fantasy, you know, from reality. And we can tell you, just from our experience, but if you want the data, we've got the data. There are all kinds of surveys out there. They all kind of congeal around this number that teenagers are spending an average of 9 hours a day consuming entertainment media. That's not schoolwork, that's just entertainment media that they're consuming. And so the question is, how much of that time is in content creation? Only about 3% of that is in content creation. That content creation could be the really cool, I've come up with a new water conservation technique. It could be that, but it could also just be a shot of Vine video that I'm putting up or whatever. So the other 97% is a big question mark. And we can break down the biggest pieces with this nice little pie chart here. The biggest chunk of that 9 hours is passive consumption.
That's porn and movies.
Right. 26% would be communication.
Social media.
And 25% would be the active or interactive consumption.
Video games.
And then there's 7% with, nobody knows what that is. And then the 3% of content creation. So they're not really doing amazing things. And one of the reasons they're not doing amazing things is because of this addiction piece. And obviously we're not addiction specialists, and so we can't really comment intelligently on anything other than what we've read and what you've heard some of the brilliant minds already talk about today, and you will tomorrow as well. But the teams will tell you this. This isn't this isn't lost on them. They get it. They know that they can't put their phones down. But it's very difficult in a classroom. You can't ignore the impact that this has in the classroom. You can't get a kid to put their phone away. And if you have good rapport, you can just say, hey, can you please put your phone away? And they'll put it away. But we have at our school 90-minute classes. I guarantee you, before that 9 minutes is over, that phone's coming back out. They can't stop. And this goes back. It's 2001. This article. There you go. And this is not a secret. Video game designers are trying to make the games addictive as they possibly can, and they're bragging about it. This goes back almost 2 decades. And so the goal, of course, is trap the kid in a rat in a cage. And a quote from that article was, "We've got to make the players play forever." Okay, so the kids are literally in some ways powerless against the pull that they feel in their pocket. Bill Gates and Steve Jobs knew that this was dangerous territory, and they tried as much as they could to keep their kids tech-free. And so we know that when a kid is in class and he or she has a laptop or a tablet or a phone, it's going to be really difficult. And it's going to be difficult to use it productively. So when we do it, what we're doing is setting kids up for failure.
Yeah, to put this in perspective, to what Joe and I battle against on a daily basis, let's kind of do a little mind activity here. Imagine back to your days in school, imagine your biology class, all right? So, man, don't put that name. But imagine you're learning something very important, like the fundamentals of life, the structure of DNA, all right? But unlike your classroom, we're in a new digitally enhanced classroom. So take your teacher, who's boring, and move them off to the side. And instead of listening to them talk about DNA, you can listen to experts, watch YouTube videos on your laptop by people like James Watson, talk about how he discovered the double helix. You can interact with a digital DNA structure. I mean, that sounds great, and it sounds a lot better, or at least different. But in this digitally enhanced classroom, that's not the only thing. The other thing is all of your best friends, everybody you ever met, sitting next to you, tapping you on the shoulder. Hey, look at what I ate last night. Hey, do you want to know anything about the Second Amendment? Hey, it's just bombardment all the time, and they can't help it. Down here, you have an arcade, limitless plays, and with games that are designed, like we just want to, with the intention of being addicted. Down here, you have a theater with tens of thousands of films and binge-worthy television shows. And up here, a giant stack of pornography. It's no wonder that 90%, of course 90% of teachers think kids are distracted. Imagine playing or being in this classroom and focusing on the DNA. That would be too much to ask for most adults, much less an adolescent or teen who, one, has a desire to fit in with their peer groups more than anything else, and an over-enhanced fear of missing out. Two, they have lessened or executive function and delayed gratification. And three, they have enough sex hormones pumping through their veins to kill a small baby elephant. So, expecting a child or a teen or an adolescent to sit through this lesson and learn anything about DNA in this example is expecting something that's virtually impossible.
So we know they're not using technology in productive ways, but the people who are big academic supporters say, okay, well, maybe to you it looks like they're just playing, but guess what? They're learning. And kids are learning today in new and different ways that older generations just don't understand. You're old, you don't get it, and the kids are learning, okay? And this sounds very familiar. I don't know if you are familiar with what an open school was. I went to an open school. My high school was an open school. And if you don't know what that is, I want you to think of the worst idea imaginable in education. It was that. Okay? What an open school is there are no interior walls. That's what it's, that's it. That's the whole model. There are no interior walls. So there's an English class there, kids just kind of gathered around, and there's a math class over there with kids gathered around, and a history class over there. God forbid somebody was showing a movie, like over there. You're over here ignoring algebra or whatever, and somebody showed a movie of it. A colossally stupid idea. But at the time, this was the 70s, people were like, hey man, kids learn differently, man. And so, when they need freedom to move around, man, and go wherever they want. Well, that was really honestly the rationale, was kids are just different and they need something new and they need a new model and whatever. Well, again, a colossally horrendous idea. And of course, it didn't take too long for us to realize nobody's learning anything. The fact that I did learn anything is really shocking to me. And so we put the walls back up, of course, and now if you go back to my high school, it looks like a lot of high schools. It has classrooms and doors and windows and whatever else. But that narrative sounds very familiar today. Kids are different, man. They learn differently. We need to do something different for them because they know best and they know how to make things that you'll never understand, how to do things that you'll never understand. We have ed tech quotes like this all over the place. The real reason kids play computer games is because they're learning. Did you know that? That's why they're playing video games, because they're learning. And unconsciously, they're preparing themselves for the coming life of the 21st century. That's why they're playing video games. Think of how patently absurd that is just on its face.
Yeah, I mean, we hear this kind of stuff every time we go to a public in-service or work. We hear this kind of, think about what he's saying. He's saying that teenagers lock themselves in their parents' basement for 6 to 8 hours to play games like World of Warcraft, to take on personas like elves and wizards and fight orcs because they want to know more about 21st century and the real world. What do you think the 21st century is going to look like? What are you saying? This whole notion that if that were true, if these video games and these entertainment forms of media that these kids are engaged with for most of their waking day, if they're so rich, if they're so cognitively challenging, then why is it we see a 7% decrease in math achievement for the kids who spend the most time on it? If kids are really on it because they have a thirst for knowledge, why is it we see those same kids have the lowest classroom engagement? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. A 2014 study done by Duke, they introduced computers into homes that didn't have them. It's closest to the experimental group you can get. And what they found is that after they introduced screens to these houses, that math and reading scores dropped. So how is that the same? This study right here, multiple studies have shown significant atrophy in the brain for video game addicts. How does that imply that people who are playing video games the most have atrophy in their brain? Now, I am not a brain expert like half the people in here, all right? But I wouldn't expect to see brain atrophy in a group of people who are engaged in something that is challenging.
Yeah, and I also am not a brain expert, but less brain sounds bad. Right, we can agree, more brain is probably better than less brain. So this clearly is not, it's laughable, but if it weren't so sad, that's really what we're being told, and these are the kinds of things we hear in presentations, and that's why you gotta have more time in school. But even if let's say if they're not learning as much with this screen inundation, which clearly they're not, if they're really better off, there should be something to indicate that aren't kids happier and healthier, right? There should be some evidence to show kids are happier and healthier. Even if they're learning, let's put that aside. But let's just say they're happier, they gotta be happier and healthier, right? They're playing games, they're amused all the time, they're constantly seeking entertainment, so they've gotta be just amused, right? Well, we'll read all that to you, but there's a whole bunch of studies there at the bottom that have linked increased screen time to all kinds of horrendous things. Increase in anxiety, increased attempted suicide, and decreasing empathy, and dysfunctional coping skills, and fewer friends, and the list goes on and on. There is, in this country, as you well know, a mental health crisis, and it goes beyond just kids, but it is certainly a major issue with kids, teenagers in particular. And ed tech advocates would probably argue, or well, not probably, we've read where they've argued, that this is coincidence. Okay, that it's a coincidence that since the advent of the cell phone, teenage anxiety is up 37%, that suicide rate has doubled, that the heaviest tech users, teenagers, the heaviest smartphone users are the ones who are experiencing these major problems with their psychological health. That's fine. Let's just say that it is a correlation. We don't think it is. Most mental health professionals don't think it is. But let's just say that that's it. There still should be some evidence showing that kids today are happier and healthier. And there isn't. Frankly, and we say this to each other all the time, this is a lousy time to be a teenager. And we're not supposed to talk about it. And if there's anything that's going to piss you off, it should be that we're not supposed to talk about it, that we're not supposed to question the gospel that this is good for kids. And when you do question, then you're branded as, well, you're a resistor. They have words for it. You're a resistor. Okay, you're not an early adopter. And we can't label people. We shouldn't be labeling people anyway, but you certainly can't label people because they want good things to happen for kids. And that's one of the big problems we're having with this whole narrative, is we're all on the same team. Again, as I said at the beginning, I don't know anybody, especially in education, that wants to hurt kids. Everybody wants good things for kids. So there should at least be a conversation. There should at least be focus groups and teachers and principals and parents to sit down and go, hey, what do we really want for our kids? And how does this look? If we're thinking about adopting one-to-one technology and bringing those screens into the school, shouldn't we really discuss whether that's what we want to do? We're not supposed to talk about it. We're just supposed to accept that Google knows best.
And this narrative is so far from reality. The only people that would be creating it have to have never talked to kids before, and that's the reality that we come to. So the idea of where this is coming from is it's clear. Kids will tell you that their own interactions is unspectacular. It's coming from big tech companies who, this shouldn't surprise you, are paying for their own research to tell you that their devices are effective in the classroom. Would it surprise you that HP did a study and they found the more HP you use, the better kids do in school? Well, an actual scientific study that looked into these claims said all of these ed tech promises claims to improve student performance are specious, that they have no founding and that they don't belong. Yet schools are willing to invest $80 billion a year in this promise.
So that's the end of the myth 2. Myth 3 is one, teachers, you've probably heard this a bunch of times, that schools are killing children's inherent love of learning. That kids come into school and they love learning, and by the time they graduate, they hate learning. And so again, this is one of those amazing things that teachers and principals and everybody's doing everything they can because we love kids, and then ed tech comes in and says, you're the problem, schools, and we go, okay, we're the problems, you're right. So let's figure out how to change schools and make kids like school. The narrative goes like this. This is an ed tech supporter who said that 95% of students love school in kindergarten. By grade 9, that feeling has declined to 37%. It's a hell of a lot of disengaged students. Welcome to kids. Right? When teenagers, if you've ever talked to a 9th grader, they don't like anything. And that's the way it goes. And so the problem, the way it's framed is that when you start out, when you're a preschooler or a kindergartner, you're so excited to go to school. It's my daughter. She's beautiful. And she's so excited. It's her first day of preschool. She's going to Mrs. Colonna's class. And she's so excited for preschool. But look what's going to happen when she gets to high school. She's going to be so sad. And look how sad she is. This girl said she didn't have her phone, so she's really sad. She's in a school that's not letting her have her phone, so she's sad. And that's what's going to happen, right? She's going to get older, and then school's going to just beat it all out of her, and she's not going to be happy anymore. And one-to-one learning to the rescue. If you give a kid a laptop, now they're going to love school. Okay, that's the narrative. That's a fine narrative, but it ignores the fact of just normal development of kids. Here's another picture of my daughter. This was taken just a couple days ago. when I knew that I was going to need a picture for this part of the presentation. And I said, you know what, I need a picture for crying, I'll just wait 5 minutes. Because she's 3, and she's crying. Now, she's crying, look at her, that is pain. She is crying like her little heart would break. You know why she's crying? Right here in her hand, she has a little doll. And she really likes the doll, but she wants to do other stuff with her hands. And so what she wants to do is take the doll and jam it in her shoe. She's wearing shoes. She wants to jam it in her shoe and walk around so she can have her hands free, but the doll keeps falling out. That's why she's crying. Okay? She's crying because she's insane. 3-year-olds are insane. And we're not going to change schools because of the feelings of 3-year-olds. That's more insane than she is. To make policy based on that. So what do they look like when they get older? This is my son, my oldest son. I'm a terrible photographer. I can't even get rid of red eyes. But this is him on his prom night. And I took this picture because I thought it was hilarious. And again, I'm a terrible photographer. I cut off his arm, but he's pointing. He's kicking me out of his room because it's his prom night. I want to take pictures. And that makes me an idiot. And he thinks I'm the worst person in the world at this moment because he's a teenager. And teenagers are cantankerous, and they're moody, and that's just how they are. And we love them. We've devoted our lives to working with teenagers. And this is just normal stuff, right? Teenagers are just going to be less enamored with your biology teacher or your Latin teacher or whatever. It's not that there's a problem with schools. I guarantee if you'd taken that survey on like some sort of Sanskrit tablet 2,000 years ago, you would have gotten the same answer. Kids who at the beginning of education loved it, by the end, get me out of here. Maybe go kill an ox or something. Right? There's got to be something else besides this. And so what we end up with is not being able to, if you focus on that, if you focus on this problem that the schools are the problem, we've got to fix that. And you're missing the point, which is trying to prepare kids for the future.
We're almost out of time, but one of the big issues is that these myths are not just false, they're not just unsubstantiated, they're also detrimental to kids' education. That screens in schools work more to undermine kids' attention, and they work more to make learning more challenging than ever before. And it's not until schools realize this and start treating like that we can start to prepare kids for the 21st century. Schools can't go on to... Technology only works to enhance existing skills. And these kids lack most of these fundamental skills. I don't care if it's the 20th century or the 21st century, whatever. Kids need to be able to socialize, they need to be able to think critically, they need to be able to know things. This is what schools need to do, and then once you do that, let technology then come in. Let technology enhance existing skills. But until that happens, that should be schools' focus. The illogical nature of saying, hey, when we get kids ready for the 21st century, so technology's moving so quickly, let's give all kindergartens iPads. These will be outdated by the time they leave 5th grade. So how does that make any sense?
Okay. Well, the other thing we get, and teachers in the room probably also get, that you need to infuse your lessons with technology and do things like teach literature through Twitter, and teach math through Minecraft, and teach history through Facebook. Again, if you're laughing, this is real. We're being serious. This is what you're supposed to be doing if you're a good teacher. And so the claims that you hear from ed tech firms, we just went to their websites, the Google Education website. It's transforming what's possible, and we're breaking down learning's biggest barriers. At Dell, we believe that every student should have a voice and choice in the learning process. Why are we listening to Dell again? What is this fascination with Dell knows best? No, they don't. Teachers and principals and schools and parents know best. That's how to educate kids. We can ignite a love of learning with interactive tools. That's from Pearson. The love of learning gets ignited through great teaching, and through collaborative effort between kids working with other kids and kids working with their teacher and working with their parents at homes, that's igniting love of learning. So the idea that if you just give an iPad, you're going to be better off, it's a little irritating if you're a teacher. This was the former superintendent of LA schools. I don't know if you remember this, a few years ago there was LA schools were going to buy an iPad for every one of their, I think they have 1 million kids in their school. And so it was this massive, massive contract. And it was scrapped because there was some allegations about competitive bidding. And the superintendent, I think, lost his job over that. But he said, I'm not going to be interested on his way out. I'm not going to be interested in looking at third graders after the deal went south. I'm not going to be interested in looking at third graders and saying, sorry, this is the year you don't learn to read. But juniors and saying, you don't get to graduate. What? But did he learn how to read with an iPad? No. One of us learned how to read with an iPad. Of course you can learn how to read without an iPad. And this is a guy who I'm confident wants good things for kids. I don't think he's an evil person. It's just that in education, we buy into the myths over and over and over again, and it results in attitudes like that where now they're lost apparently if you don't have an iPad to teach a kid how to read. Try to Bill.
Go ahead.
Well, those are kids, and this is really what it's all about. This conference, really, this whole weekend is about kids and helping them be as happy and as healthy as they can possibly be. And school. First of all, we're really thankful that you're all here, and that we hope that this is just the beginning, and we're all going to carry some knowledge and some ideas and some passion forward. But schools, we just want you to know, can be a big part of the solution to the problem. And we thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.